So, building temples is inferior to shaping people. And shaping people is less meaningful than creating Buddhas.
Mm-hmm.
That is a direct quote from the very beginning of today's source material. And, I mean, it completely redefines the scale of what a legacy can be, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
You aren't just leaving behind, like, brick and mortar for people to look at. The goal here is to fundamentally alter the spiritual state of humanity.
Yeah, the ambition of that statement is just staggering. And I think for anyone listening today who really loves dissecting entirely new ways of looking at reality, this text definitely delivers.
It really does.
We're looking at a philosophical and, well, spiritual treatise titled Awaken to Your True Nature and Transcend the Dust.
Right.
It's written by an author named Shubemfeng. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack his highly specific, really intricate blueprint for attaining what he calls Buddhahood in the present moment.
Right, which sounds amazing. But before we jump into the actual mechanics of that blueprint, we should probably set some ground rules for how we're approaching this deep dive.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because we are looking at this purely analytically. We're not here to, endorse this spiritual framework or validate its metaphysical claims, right?
Exactly. We are just mapping the architecture of the author's arguments.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the ideas presented here are incredibly rich.
Oh, for sure.
And they provoke a ton of thought about how you interact with the physical world, regardless of what your personal worldview happens to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And his starting point, the actual prerequisite for this entire journey, is something that we can basically conceptualize as the boiling point of enlightenment.
Okay, the boiling point. So the source material actually roots this idea in history, right? It references the sixth patriarch, Huineng,
Right, Huineng.
who famously established this path of sudden enlightenment, which is this concept where the exact moment you perceive your true nature, you just instantly become a Buddha.
Yeah, it's instantaneous.
But Swifeng adds a really critical caveat to this whole tradition. He argues that sudden awakening is entirely impossible without what he calls an accumulation of change in quantity, which is such a fascinating way to frame it because it grounds this highly mystical concept in a mechanism of effort.
Right. It's not just magic.
Exactly. It removes the idea that enlightenment is just some random lottery ticket that strikes you out of nowhere, It requires rigorous and often totally unseen preparation.
Yeah. And if we look at how the text describes this accumulation, it operates a lot like boiling a pot of water.
I love this analogy.
Right. You place a pot of water on a stove, and you have to continuously apply heat.
Mm-hmm.
And in the context of this text, that heat represents, lifetimes of cultivation, countless reflections, experiencing the world, making mistakes, learning from them.
Yeah, doing the actual work.
Exactly. That ongoing process is the quantitative accumulation. And when you watch that pot, it seems like absolutely nothing is happening for the longest time.
Right, the water is completely still.
Just dead still.
Right.
But the energy is accumulating beneath the surface. And eventually, you hit that exact threshold, that exact temperature, and a qualitative shift happens. The water boils.
And that sudden boiling is the sudden enlightenment.
Bam.
Right. But it couldn't happen without all that invisible heat that came before it. You have to put in the work, even if the result isn't immediately visible to you.
Right.
I think it really validates the experience of doing heavy internal work without seeing external changes right away. That the heat is still accumulating.
So assuming you put in all that work,
Yeah.
right, and you hit that boiling point, what exactly are you supposed to be looking for?
That is the big question.
The text lays out 3 specific hallmarks of a Buddha.
Right.
3 core conditions a person has to meet. And the first condition is called perceiving the Tathagata.
Which essentially just means perceiving your true nature.
Okay.
The core idea here draws really heavily from ancient texts like the Diamond Sutra. Specifically, this one line, all forms are illusions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. The author argues that the Tathagata, the true essence of being, has no fixed form. Therefore, any concrete, tangible form cannot be the true self.
And the source actually provides a really cool who am I checklist to illustrate this.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic thought experiment for anyone listening.
It really is.
It asks, okay, am I my home? No, obviously, because if I lose my home, I'm still me.
Right.
Am I my clothes? No. My hair, my teeth, my eyes? No. And then the text pushes it to the absolute extreme.
It gets intense.
Yeah, it's like, what if my legs are amputated?
Yeah.
Well, I am still me.
Right.
What if my organs are replaced? Still me.
Right.
What if every single drop of my blood is drained out and replaced with someone else's blood? I mean, I am still me.
Yeah, it's wild.
By stripping away every single physical attribute, literally everything you can touch or see, you realize this core identity remains.
Mhm.
So, therefore, the true self, the Tathagata, has to be completely formless.
Exactly. And to explain how a person can even conceptualize a completely formless self, the text asks kind of a strange question. It asks, can you step inside a mustard seed?
A mustard seed.
Right. And, if you have a physical body, if you are attached to any sort of form, you obviously cannot enter something that small. Your body is tethered to physical dimensions.
Sure, because I'm way bigger than a seed.
Right. But if you realize that your physical body is not your true self, if you identify entirely with that formless, traceless true nature, then entering the mustard seed becomes completely effortless. You have no size. You leave no trace.
Which is a really beautiful ancient metaphor. But then the author takes that metaphor and just merges it with modern quantum physics to explain what is actually inside that seed.
Yeah, this part is fascinating. It's incredibly rare to see ancient spiritual frameworks rely on modern physics to prove their point, but the synthesis here is really striking.
Definitely.
The author describes stepping inside the mustard seed and finding this immense universe. So first, you enter a galaxy of molecules.
Okay.
Then you go deeper into a solar system of atoms. Deeper still, you find the sun of an atomic nucleus. You keep shrinking down into quarks.
Just going further and further in.
Exactly. And then the text specifically says you enter the domain of wave-particle duality, where matter starts behaving as both particles and waves.
It really reminds me of taking apart a digital screen.
Yeah.
Like if you stand back from a television, you see a concrete physical image.
Right.
A face, a landscape, a building. It looks totally real and solid. But if you get close enough, if you zoom in past the image itself, the physical form just vanishes.
It completely breaks down.
Yeah, into raw energy, just individual pixels of light. And the text is essentially saying that if you zoom in past the quantum level, past the string-like state of matter, the physical illusion of the universe dissolves into raw, non-material structure.
And the specific term the author uses for that foundational structure is spiritual antimatter.
Spiritual antimatter.
Yeah. It is a structure of pure conscious essence, completely devoid of physical form. That is the Tathagata. That is your true nature. And crucially, the author points out this isn't unique to humans. All life forms possess this underlying structure. If you can see through the physical illusion of any being, a person, an animal, a plant, and recognize that underlying conscious essence, you are perceiving the Tathagata. You've met the first condition.
Okay, but, and I feel like this is the natural next question, how do you actually operate in a physical world if you've decided you're essentially made of formless antimatter?
Right, it's a huge practical problem.
Because you still have to wake up, go to work, interact with physical forms. Navigating that tension brings us to the second hallmark of a Buddha outlined in the text, which is embodying effortless action, or as the author calls it, non-action.
Yeah, and the foundational premise of this second hallmark is pretty severe. It states that where there is action, there is error.
Where there's action, there's error.
Yes. The text posits that the original structure of our true nature is absolutely perfect. But the moment you start striving, the moment you try to force an outcome or, impose your will on the world, you create flaws in that perfect structure.
It makes me think of like a completely still pond.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
If a breeze kicks up and puts ripples in the water, your first human instinct might be to fix it, right? To make it flat again.
Sure.
But if you try to smooth out the water by pressing your hands against the ripples, the very act of trying to fix it just creates more splashing, more ripples, more chaos.
Exactly.
The only way to return the pond to stillness is to literally stop touching it. You have to do nothing.
And to illustrate just how pervasive our human instinct to splash in the pond really is, the author categorizes humanity into 5 distinct levels.
Okay.
And these are based entirely on what drives their actions. So at the bottom, we have ignorant people who are ruled entirely by basic instincts.
Right.
Just above them are worldly people. They are driven by self-interest and desires.
Makes sense.
Then we have mortals. Now, mortals are bound by sentiment. Their driving force is emotion, their family, their clan, their nation.
Which kind of flips our normal moral compass upside down, doesn't it?
Really does.
Because most of us consider dedicating your life to your family or your country to be like a high virtue. But this framework sees it as an emotional tether that forces you into continuous action and striving.
Exactly. It completely binds you to the physical world.
Wow. Okay, so what's above mortals?
The 4th category is sages, and they are guided by reason and intellect. And finally, at the very top are saints or celestials. They live purely by spirit, and are capable of true non-action.
Okay, wait. Let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
If a sage operates purely on logic and reason, why doesn't that logic lead them straight to the ultimate truth? Like, shouldn't reason be the absolute best tool to avoid unnecessary striving? Why aren't sages at the very top of the hierarchy?
That's a great question, and the text provides a really precise critique of reason here. It argues that sages falter at critical moments because reason is fragile when it's exposed to extreme stimuli.
Extreme stimuli, like what?
The author gives a few vivid examples. Imagine you present a highly reasonable sage with immense, just soul-tempting wealth, or you offer them absolute, unchecked power.
Okay, yeah, that would test anyone.
Right, or perhaps most profoundly, you threaten the survival of their family or their nation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Under that level of extreme pressure, the text asserts, the sage will abandon reason. They will give rise to a mind of striving, they will intervene, and they will fall right back into the trap of action. Reason is just a fair-weather tool. It cannot withstand the storm of ultimate temptation or existential threat.
So even the most logical, reasonable person in the world will start splashing in the pond if you threaten their family.
Exactly.
But, that brings up a massive paradox within the source material itself.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Right. The author of this text, Sufeng, actively formed an organization called Lifechanyuan. He literally wrote this massive treatise to unify world religions and create a completely new era for humanity.
Yeah, he did.
So how on earth is writing a manifesto and building a whole organization not striving? How is he not creating error by trying to shape the world?
It's the obvious critique, right? But the author actually anticipates this and provides an answer that is deeply tied to this philosophy of non-action. He explains that he and his followers achieve these massive goals by treating the entire endeavor as a game.
Like game.
Yeah. They approach it like children playing house.
Oh, I see. So it's like you build a sandcastle, but you legitimately do not care if the tide comes in and washes it away 5 minutes later.
Precisely. They execute the actions required for their goals, but they divorce themselves entirely from the outcome. The author notes, when hungry we eat, when sleepy we rest.
Just doing what's in front of you.
Right. If the religions unify, great. If they don't, that is equally fine. By treating their life's work as a playful, temporary illusion, they exist in what the text calls a state of hunden.
Hunden. And how exactly does the text define that?
It's a state where you realize every single small action is naturally connected to the vast, larger mechanism of the universe. Okay? And because you fundamentally trust that larger mechanism, you don't feel the need to force the current. You achieve non-action while leaving nothing undone. You do the work, but without that desperate attachment to the result that ends up creating error.
I mean, that sounds ideal.
Yeah.
But treating your literal life's work like a child's game of house requires you to legitimately not care if the house burns down.
Yeah, it's not easy.
How do you actually train your mind to not react to that destruction? Which I guess is exactly where the third and final hallmark comes in. Dwelling nowhere in mind.
Right. This condition argues that the mind must not attach to any sensory input. It cannot abide in form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or thought.
No attachment at all.
None. The source uses a really visceral contrast to explain this mental discipline. It says your mind must reach a state of absolute stillness, whether you are listening to the sweet, melodic voice of an enchanting beauty, or if you are listening to a harsh, hoarse, hair-raising howl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, your internal reaction has to be exactly the same. Complete, unmoving clarity.
Okay, but wait. If I'm supposed to feel the exact same way listening to a beautiful melody as I do hearing some terrifying howl, isn't that just nihilism? Like, aren't we just numbing ourselves entirely to the human experience?
It's a really common critique, but it's a crucial distinction to make. Because nihilism is the belief that nothing matters, right?
Right.
Which almost always leads to apathy or despair. But non-attachment, at least in the context of this text, is about experiencing the melody or the howl fully in the present moment, but not letting your mind cling to it once it passes.
So you don't hold on to it.
Exactly. You don't build a house in the sensation. When the beautiful song ends, you don't chase after it with desire. And when the howl echoes, you don't recoil in lasting fear. You observe the input, you acknowledge it, and you let it pass through you without leaving a footprint on your mind.
It's like watching a train pull into a station. You note its arrival, but you refuse to actually get on board.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
But, okay, if we aren't supposed to attach our minds to worldly sensations, what about holy texts? Right. Surely, if I want to be a Buddha, my mind should abide in the teachings of the Bible, or the Quran, or the Buddhist sutras themselves.
The text takes a radically deconstructive stance on this, like truly radical. The author claims that the Buddha, Shakyamuni, taught for 49 years, but actually spoke no fixed dharma.
And by dharma, we're talking about like universal truth or cosmic law, right?
Yes. The author argues that to claim the Buddha left behind rigid, fixed rules or laws is actually to slander the Buddha.
Slander him, wow.
Yeah. According to this framework, true dharma is formless and ever-changing. It is, quote, constancy within change and change within constancy.
Okay.
Therefore, all holy texts, the Bible, the sutras, and explicitly even Shuifeng's own writings in Lifechanyuan are merely skillful means.
Skillful means, so they're just convenient tools for a specific time and place.
Exactly.
It's like using a raft to cross a rushing river, right?
Right.
The raft is absolutely essential for survival while you are in the water.
Yeah.
But once you reach the opposite shore, you don't pick the raft up and carry it on your back for the rest of your journey. You just leave it behind.
That is the exact mechanism of skillful means. Clinging to religious dogmas, even the ones that safely got you across the river, prevents a pure mind. The text explicitly states that to achieve ultimate stillness, you must cast aside Jesus, Shakyamuni, Muhammad, Laozi, and Shuifeng himself.
You have to throw away the map to experience the territory.
Yes, beautifully put.
Okay, so let's put this all together. You endure the heat and hit the boiling point.
Mm-hmm.
You realize you are a formless quantum essence, which is perceiving the Tathagata.
Right.
You stop striving and treat life like a game of house to achieve non-action. And you let go of all dogmas and attachments so your mind dwells nowhere.
You've got it.
If you manage to meet these three conditions, what actually happens next?
This is where the author delivers the climax of his philosophy. He asserts that if you meet these three conditions, you don't eventually become a Buddha after you die. You don't become a Buddha in your next reincarnation. You are a Buddha right now, in this exact present moment.
Ah, awaken to your true nature and transcend the dust. Attain Buddhahood in the present moment.
Exactly.
The author kind of tempers this euphoric promise with a very sobering reality check immediately after, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He has to. Because he acknowledges the sheer difficulty of maintaining this state, especially for those who are still accumulating their heat.
Right, for the rest of us.
Yeah. For most practitioners, you might achieve this state of Buddhahood for a single fleeting instant.
Just a flash.
Right. You catch what he calls the light of spirit for a split second. You suddenly understand the formless nature of reality, and then in the very next instant, you get distracted.
Someone cuts you off in traffic.
Exactly. Your mind attaches to a problem, and you crash right back down into the mortal world.
So it's not some permanent mountain peak you conquer and just live on forever. It's a state of balance you have to actively maintain.
Yes. But you know, the tone of the text is actually incredibly encouraging here.
It is. The author says, look, if you can manage to be a Buddha for just one instant a day, that is a remarkable achievement.
Which really reframes enlightenment. It makes it an active daily practice rather than this distant, impossible finish line.
Exactly.
If you can stretch that one instant to 2 instants, that's even better. If you can string those moments together into a few minutes or an hour, you are actively climbing the Mount of Enlightenment.
Right.
And the long-term goal is to slowly, day by day, purify the remaining human, animal, and demonic natures within you until you can abide as a Buddha from dawn to dusk.
And the mechanism for purifying those, animal or demonic instincts relies entirely on that practice of non-action we discussed earlier.
How so?
Well, how do you purify an instinct driven by survival, greed, or anger? By continually returning to a state of stillness when those urges arise, you effectively starve them of the energy they need to survive.
Oh, I see. Every time you refuse to react to an insult, every time you refuse to strive for some unnecessary gain, you weaken the tether. You are starving the mortal instincts and feeding the light of spirit.
So let's try to synthesize this whole blueprint for you, the listener. If we follow Shuifeng's framework, transcending the dust requires you to endure the heat of your life experiences until you recognize that you are not your physical body.
Right.
You are a formless, non-material structure of conscious essence. You then navigate the physical world like a child playing a game of houseconder. You're engaged in the work, but entirely unattached to the outcome, thereby avoiding the error of striving. And finally, you have to let go of every fixed dogma, every religious text, and every comforting rule book that brought you to this point, so your mind remains utterly still in the face of both the beautiful melody and the hair-raising howl.
It really leaves us with an incredibly powerful, practical framework to consider. The text suggests that enlightenment is a series of micro moments. It's a state of non-attachment that can slip through your fingers the very second you start caring too much about an outcome or a physical form.
So here is a final thought for you to mull over today as you carry this back into your daily routine.
Yeah.
Think about the biggest, most serious stressor in your life right now. The obstacle that is keeping you up at night, the thing making you strive and panic.
We all have one.
What would happen if you looked at that massive stressor and for just 1 minute, you decided to treat it not as a life or death scenario, but simply as a temporary illusion in a child's game of house?
How would that shift in perspective change the way you act today?
Could you find that one fleeting instant of stillness amidst all the chaos without forcing an outcome?
It's worth trying.
Remember, it takes a lot of invisible heat to finally make the water boil. Keep applying the heat. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep an eye out for those fleeting flashes of spirit.